Thank you. I want to welcome everyone to our October 17th meeting, and please note the council's in full attendance. I see our state representative in the audience. Want to recognize Jeannie Morrison. Thank you for being here. Okay, so our first item on our agenda is items from council. If anyone has anything? Ms.
I've got
Solis?
one, but I don't know if it's going to be pertaining to the hurricane or not, but I had somebody that called me. You know, the two big heavy rains that we had after the hurricane? Well, it flooded a lot of streets, and I don't know if it was because of the
It's being blocked.
the inlets being blocked. Well, this particular person lives at 3409 Wildwood, but he says he's got backup constantly. It's not just from the times after Harvey. And he was looking for some kind of relief there on
We can send, did you get the address, Donald?
3409 Wildwood.
Okay, we'll look at it.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I'd like to pull a couple of the consent agendas, D4 and D5.
D4 and 5?
Uh-huh.
Wait. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
I have one item. I received a call from a citizen lives off of Larkspur. Said there's been numerous reports of speeding in that area, as well as, I guess, drinking and illegal drugs being done in Tracy Lee Park. Last night, it kind of boiled over. One of the residents went to speak with one of the young men that was racing up and down the street, and the person racing tried to attack him with a metal bat. And someone else jumped across their fence after they saw what was happening and helped subdue the young man that was wielding the bat. But if we could step up patrols in that area a little bit, maybe. I think once that road's built, that's gonna take away that down there a lot, but until then.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I know the chief took a note. He's shaking his head back there.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, council?
Daryl, I had a question for Daryl. As far as the hurricane debris pickup, fencing, construction debris from hurricane damage, that's being performed this week?
Yes, sir. We actually started last week. We're continuing this week. We have two types of trucks running in town. One is still picking up cul-de-sacs and dead ends. And some of the stuff that was under wires and under tree limbs that we couldn't get with the bigger trucks as far as brush goes. But we are operating in about 4 different areas of town right now picking up debris. So if you've got it, now's the time to get it out, because debris, we're only making the one pass. Brush, we'll be making a second. So if you've got more, don't worry about it. But the debris needs to get out as soon as possible.
Thank you.
But the brush needs to be storm debris brush and not freshly cut limbs.
Yes, ma'am. I was actually telling Gilbert a while ago, I had several calls today, people upset that we didn't pick up their brush. They've trimmed their trees, but it's not storm debris. FEMA looks at storm debris as trees and limbs that were down due to the storm. That's been almost 2 months. So if you're putting stuff out that's green, FEMA is not going to reimburse the city for picking that up. Therefore, we won't pick it up until we resume our regular brush service once we're caught up.
Let me ask you for clarification. You were talking about the storm debris you're going to pick up one time.
Yes, ma'am.
You said, but now brush, there's going to be a second time. I want to make sure that you're clear that the time coming up is the second time. There aren't
Yeah.
going to be 2 more times.
There will be one more time for brush. We've picked up once pretty much. We've got some areas that we're touching up that we couldn't get to with the bigger trucks due to wires, tree limbs, dead ends, cul-de-sacs. Once we're finished with that, once we're pretty much finished with the debris pickup, the non-brush debris, so your fencing, your sheetrock, your furniture, that type of thing, then we'll move back and start making a second brush pickup. But we'll announce that when we start that second brush pickup. But it's important right now that we get all the debris out so we can get that picked up, the non-vegetative debris. And then once that's picked up, go ahead and get your brush out because we should be hot on the heels of that with the second brush pickup. We want to get as close to that 90-day, 90% reimbursement from FEMA. So we're pushing, working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day to try and make that deadline for that reimbursement.
And is the aloe field still open?
Yes, ma'am, for brush though,
For
not
brush.
for debris. And the reason is because debris can be so many different things. We don't want people to show up out there with TVs, computers, things like that, that will not be accepted as that type of debris.
Just a point of clarification, but people can take brush to aloe?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
People can take brush, we're just not accepting C&D, the construction demolition type materials at Aloe.
And the brush has to be storm-related, though.
Storm related, they're not gonna let you come in with any green brush.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The furniture from the houses, inside the houses that were damaged, when is that scheduled to be picked up?
Right now, you can put that out right now. That's part of the C&D pickup that we're currently doing. We've already finished up the Greens Edition. We've already finished up quite a bit of the area down by Vine and off of Water Street where the people were affected mostly by the flood.
Oh, Old Town area.
Old Town, yes, ma'am.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there's a lot of trees that are being trimmed. Those aren't going to be picked up in the second round either?
No, ma'am. FEMA says in order for reimbursement, they have to be trees that were down due to the storm. And so if the tree was down due to the storm, our monitors that decide what is and what is not reimbursable will not allow us, I mean, we can pick them up, but they're not going to reimburse us for those trees.
How will they be able to tell?
If they're green when they come by, but
No,
it's-
these are trees that, like the limbs that were broken, and now they're having them cut down, so you don't have all that brown stuff all over town.
right, but they'll be brown whenever they cut them because they're brown now.
Right.
Yeah, so they'll know.
Okay.
Where we run into problems is some of the addresses that I had calls on today. We'd already been by once and picked up. We went by to pick up fencing, and there's a big pile of green limbs out there, so they've gone back and cut their trees up some more after. So it wasn't necessarily caused by the hurricane, and they called to ask us why we didn't pick it up. And so trimming your trees post-hurricane this far after the hurricane is not going to be accepted.
So remind us again about the regular pickup when you do start it again. You pick up just weekly, but there is a special deal quarterly.
Right, we'll pick up quarterly when we restart, which we will not restart till the contractor's made his second round, because we want to make sure we get the storm debris picked up where the storm debris goes. We'll begin our pickup, and we will pick up, so let's say we start December 1st. Whatever area is on the map for December 1st is where we'll start. We'll do our quarterly pickup. Of course, we'll take the 6 cubic yards. Anything over that is the extra charge of $1.50 a minute. Or if you don't want to wait, you can always call in and set up a special pickup, which we come out and do. We schedule and come out and do. And there is an extra charge for that as well. Yard waste, OC's reminding me, we are picking up yard waste. So, I mean, if you've got a small group of limbs, or we're telling people if the contractor's already come by and, you're left with some scraps, just put that in your yard waste can or yard waste bag. We pick that up every week. Yes, sir.
Contractors are damaging some streets and curves and sidewalks. How's that being addressed, and who's liable for it, or who's responsible?
The
for
contractor's
fixing it?
responsible for that. We also have keeping a list of where they're damaging grass. And so at the end, before the contractor's done, we'll be taking grass back to those places and working through those issues.
And what about the sidewalks and the curves and the asphalt?
Where we've had a couple of calls that we've reported, so we'll keep up with those as well. Yes, sir.
Because it does appear like an old Victoria downtown off of Vine.
I'm only aware of a few where they've put down their outriggers.
Yeah.
And they've made a mark. We've asked them to, those big trucks are pretty much done now, but we'd asked them to go to using some pads. I know some of them did. I can't account for all of them.
It's just not the outriggers, it's also the claw when they go down on the sidewalk.
Okay.
They're dropping them too hard and they're cracking the sidewalk and picking them up.
If we get those reported, we're keeping track of them. So I'd ask if they're out there, let us know, because we're not gonna know unless somebody tells us that it's going on. But we are keeping track of all the damage caused.
And as a reminder, correct me if I'm wrong, if you hire a contractor to come thin out your trees or whatever, green limbs and the leaves, they're responsible for taking that away.
Yes, sir.
They're not to be stacking that up. If you trim your own trees, you can stack it up and
Yes, sir.
ask for that, but
Yeah, if you hire a contractor, the contractor's responsible for hauling it off.
Was the brush dumping at the backside off of Smith Street, at the Evergreen Cemetery, was that ever addressed and looked at?
Yes, it was. It hasn't been picked up yet, but it has been looked at, and the contractor's aware of it.
And I had a woman that contacted me, the tipping fee or if you have a contractor take your brush away, the fees didn't change after the hurricane, did they? They
No,
weren't-
ma'am. They will change after tonight, but they did not change after the hurricane.
Okay, as far as the landfill the landfill accepting them though, she felt like she might have been charged more than.
No
than she
rates
should
have changed at the compost or landfill until tonight.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Daryl. That was not the work session, by the way. That was a lot of good questions. And we can, if y'all think of some more, when we get to the end, certainly discuss any of that as well. Is there anything else from council? Okay, good stuff. Okay, we'll close that part out and move to citizens' communication. If anyone would like to come forward and speak about anything at all, now's the time. We only ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. Okay, seeing no one get up, we'll close citizens' communication and move into ordinances.
Item C1 is an ordinance amending the 2017-2018 City of Victoria budget to provide $6 million in funding for the relief and recovery efforts resulting from Hurricane Harvey, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for savings, and declaring an effective date.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We do not need a public hearing. If there are no questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, item passes. Consent agenda.
There are 4 items remaining on the consent agenda tonight. The first is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 3rd, 2017. The second is resolution approving the renewal of the city's agreement for the provision of rental uniforms for designated personnel in various city departments with Cintas Corporation, formerly G&K Services, in an estimated amount of $45,000 for fiscal year 2017-2018, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary for this renewal and declaring an effective date. Third is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a renewal agreement with Baker and Taylor Book Leasing System to provide Victoria Public Library with leased books in the amount of $29,926.26 and declaring an effective date. And then D6 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Civil Corps LLC for surveying services for the North Heights Utility Improvements Project, Phase 5, Guadalupe Street, in the amount of $50,000 and declaring an effective date.
All those in,
I move to
I need a
adopt.
motion. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. So D4.
D4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Axon Enterprise Incorporated to acquire body-worn cameras and tasers for use by the Victoria Police Department in the amount of $88,649.28 in the first year, with 4 additional yearly installments thereafter of $88,649 for a total of $443,259.36 and declaring an effective date.
Motion second. Discussion? Ms.
Okay,
Elise?
I see where the 88 cameras are, but I don't see the tasers, unless I didn't find them on here. I went down the description list and I didn't see anything that said tasers.
would be on page 2 of 4. And it would be the item marked 1100-004. I'm sorry, 11004. I'm sorry, 11002, black class 3 X26P.
I went through and I said, oh my God, which one is it? So we're getting all of the cameras and the lasers up front, and then we're paying for installments?
Correct, and it's just a purchasing program that alleviates the city from paying, you know, a higher upfront cost and also replacement cost for these body worn cameras and the tasers combined together.
Okay, so the replacement is on these, or the ones that we already have that you're replacing?
Correct, we're gonna
Okay.
replace every ones that we have now with year 1, and then after 2.5 years, as long as we stay in this program and the money's available to continue on the contract, we will get replaced, we'll replace all of our body worn cameras and our tasers in 2.5 years.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
How's that body worn camera program going?
I believe it's been very successful. I could tell you that just from my perspective, you know, having the ability and that transparency, that to be able to document the conversations, to be able to document the contacts, has been extremely beneficial for us. And for perhaps a variety of reasons, it's in my opinion helped to reduce the number of complaints against officers. We've also lowered the number of, it seems to be injuries to both the citizens and officers. Everyone knows that they're on camera. So I believe that the plus side of it far outweighs anything that could be on the negative side of things. I'm very pleased with the program so far and how it's, what its benefits have given us.
Thank you.
Good to hear.
Damage due to, say, an altercation with an officer.
Over.
I see on page 8, 4 of 15, 7.2 warranty limitations says damage caused by abuse, misuse, intentional or deliberate damage to the product or force. I don't see where it says if someone attacks an officer. Or it's in the line of duty.
That would be covered, because what it's talking about there is if we purposely damage the equipment, then there's a stipulation there that they wouldn't necessarily have to replace that. But if it was damaged in the course of affecting the arrest, they would cover that.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, thank you, chief. D5?
D5 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute renewals of the 2014-15 grounds maintenance and mowing contracts of the City of Victoria properties with Scott Bauer doing business as Scott Bauer's Lawn Service in the amount of $91,141. Kevin Stewart doing business as Ground Effect in the amount of $85,579. And Lawn Star Yard Care LLC in the amount of $8,375, and declaring an effective date.
So move.
Second.
A couple of questions. These are only for the water wells and things like that. We're not going to be doing the right-of-ways just yet? You're going to be coming back with another contract, or what?
That will come back in the January contract with Winston Wilson. And
Okay.
he's currently mowing those right
okay.
now, so.
And then in the CM1, it says this is the last of 3 possible renewals. For whom? For the contractor?
Yes,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
correct.
We'll go back out for bid.
When we do these
Oh.
contracts, we have the original contract, and in there's an option for 3 renewals. This is the last of those 3 renewals.
For
If-
all
if-
3 contractors?
Yes, yes, ma'am, for
Okay.
all 3 contractors.
So next time, we're going to get
Be
new
a full,
contractors?
a full bid,
or-
yes, ma'am.
But they will still be able to bid or not?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I hope they do.
okay.
Are any of these properties new to the list this year?
I do not believe we have any new properties this year, no, sir.
Because I remember driving this past year past Water Plant 3, that is at Airline and Ben Jordan, right?
That's correct.
Numerous times where it's way overgrown. Is there a set number of times they're supposed to go take care of it?
There is, and I can find that here. I think it's once, I think we have 12 times a year, if I remember correctly. And sometimes that's done, more. We'll mow it twice a month in the
Summer.
growing season. And then when it's when it's not growing in winter time, we'll just mow it once a month. But
Well, I've seen it where should have been issued a citation from
For the city.
the city for the
understand.
grass
We-
being too high over there.
yeah, I understand. We can try to keep a better eye on it.
Okay. I just did.
Okay, thank you, Donald. No further questions?
No.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay. Resolutions.
E1 is a resolution reappointing 2 current members and appointing 1 new member to the Library Advisory Board, and declaring an effective date.
Second.
Okay, motion and second, any discussions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, that passes.
Item E2 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the 2016-2017 biennium for air quality research and outreach grant from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to extend the termination date for grant activities and declaring an effective date.
Okay, any discussion?
The extension. We're going past December 31st, right?
Yes, we'll be going to
I thought the
June
money was
30th.
up at the end of the year. How are we gonna fund this?
It will still be TCEQ money. They've given us a chance to extend that out since the program is ending. They're giving all the entities a chance, a little bit longer to spend the money before we have to turn it back in. We've got some projects that we would like to finish. Mobile classroom is among one of the things that we want. We've started, we're halfway done, we'd like to finish it. We get to keep it when the contract is up, and we believe it's something we can use going forward. Plus, this will cover some of the money that I had in my budget to help look out for what may happen if we have days that exceed the ozone average for our area, so that we get that notification.
Does it help pay for an employee?
It does not.
That's what I was gonna say, the employee still goes away at the end of the year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That's for the attainment status that we have, right?
For the current, yes, ma'am. But it goes into our outreach program. We've kind of pulled away some of that money that we were going to use in the future, maybe for advertising and different things, to finish this classroom that we'll have to use going in the future.
So have we had any discussions with the county with this grant going away and this air quality portion is a countywide deal? I know that the city took it on as probably better at that time to take on the monitoring and everything, just make it centralized and it was fully reimbursed. But now that it's not going to be fully reimbursed, is this something that we've talked to the county about as we need to, share this cost?
I have not.
I know,
I have
I'm sorry.
not formally, somewhat informally, but to make a serious request to the full commissioners court, no. But I have thought about that a lot, so.
I think it's worth a good discussion.
They
yeah.
are all aware of it.
Yep.
The commissioners are.
Well, the data is critical going forward, the value of that data to protect ourselves, so. I mean, we can talk about that some more,
Okay.
maybe, might be something to do. It has been on my mind, so you're right.
We haven't made people aware, though, historically in the past, if there was a industry that was looking at Victoria and we needed to do some modeling, we were able to do that through the grant. We've made those entities aware that if that comes up again, they're going to have to pay for the modeling.
Okay. Any further questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Thank you.
E3 is a resolution authorizing the purchase of 16 vehicles and equipment from various vendors utilizing government cooperative contracts for a total amount of $1,130,910.67, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the purchases and declaring an effective date.
Move to adopt.
Okay, we have a motion and a couple of seconds.
I'd like- I was going to say, one of us wants to make a statement here.
Yes.
Because this resolution does authorize us to buy some Ford Explorers for the police department and 2 for the fire department. And, you know, there's been some recent updates from Ford, well, I guess from the Department of Transportation, regarding the Ford Explorers. So what we're going to do is, if the resolution's approved, we're not going to go buy those Explorers right now. We're going to kind of wait and see what's going on with, if they end up doing a recall.
The Department of Transportation's pushing Ford right now to do a recall on these vehicles. Ford is still holding to their guns that, look, the vehicles that are affected have been mostly police vehicles. And their belief is that the issue is when we modify the cars to accept all of our equipment that we put in the cars, not that it's a Ford product issue. And so, in talking with the city manager, we're just not ready to make that purchase, but, you know, if we get the approval, we can sit on it, we can see what happens. If they do it, great. If not, we may need to go back and look at Chevrolet, the Tahoes, that we were buying several years back.
So, and that approval would last during the course of the budget year? And you would let us know if you,
Oh,
at some
absolutely.
point, if that.
Well, the Chevrolets are going to be a little more expensive anyway.
Yes, we'd
so-
have to come back with an amendment to buy the
Okay.
Chevrolets.
Okay.
And just to our knowledge, through the police chief and the fire chief, we haven't had any complaints. None of our alarms have gone off, but it is safer just to step back and see before we spend some more money on them.
And again, it wasn't the vehicle, it was when they installed the equipment, I think a hole got drilled too far through something, and
That's what
that's what I've
Ford,
heard.
that's
Okay.
what Ford is saying. Now, the National Transportation Department's wanting them to recall 1.9 million vehicles. So we'll see how that goes.
Right, okay.
For these vehicles, we look to get over 100,000 miles usually.
Yes, sir,
Kind of generals.
or they've been down an excessive amount of time.
Okay, that's
A lot of-
my question was about one of the fire trucks with, or the Expedition with about 88,000. I was wondering why.
Yeah, it's, you know, we take multiple things into account, the age, the mileage, but then also the downtime. A lot of these vehicles that are on here have been down more than they've been up, unfortunately.
I figured.
Okay. Any further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, thank you.
Item E4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the 26th Amendment to the Containerized Commercial Solid Waste Collection and Disposal Services Contract with Waste Management of Texas Incorporated to allow modified fees for commercial solid waste collection services, on-demand household hazardous waste collection services, residential recyclable collection services, and declaring an effective date.
Council?
Move we adopt.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there questions?
I would just use my usual annual spiel. So essentially, they're bound by contract what they can raise the rate. This is a contract that was done many, many years ago. The contract will come up in 2021, will go out to bid in 2021. However, they're looking at a 3.74% rate increase, and what that boils down to is a 6-yard once a week now, currently, is $131.62 a month. That cost will go to $136.15 a month, a difference of $4.53. And that's about the average of the containers in town. Is a 6-yard's a good middle of the road section.
Tied to fuel prices and everything else.
Right,
Yeah.
they're allowed to claim for fuel, as are the next two that I'm gonna talk about.
And still doing a good job for us.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, thank you. Let's see, we were gonna move something
Yeah, we're
here.
going to let him go ahead and do the 2 city manager reports.
Yeah,
With Gardenville and,
were we gonna do that before that?
no, this is
This is the right,
perfect. Yes,
okay,
sir. It's perfect.
there's, yeah, the two city manager reports, as Ms. Garrett said, we'll just tie those in with this item. go
So
right ahead.
Texas Landfill Management also is bound by contract in order for them to do their increases. Their increase this year will be 4.61%. That's going to go from 22.67 to 23.72, so about $1.05 per ton that's brought in. That's your brush and vegetative debris, your yard waste. That's the city rate. And then Republic, who operates our landfill, I'll take council back a couple of years. We leased a small piece of property out adjacent to the landfill to Republic. And in return for that lease, we arranged and to be able to take a look at their rate increases that they give the city. And we have the choice to accept or deny 3 consecutive rate increases. We have chosen to deny the rate increase this year, so there will be, for the city waste, there will be no increase at the landfill for city waste this year. That leaves us the chance to exercise 2 more rate increases in the future.
This is just a report only, there's no
The-
action.
These are both reports only, right?
No action.
They, by contract, do not require a vote to pass.
Okay, but it says that you have 3 non-consecutive years, so next year we couldn't exercise that
Oh,
option.
I'm sorry,
with Republic.
did I say consecutive? I meant to
Yes.
say non-consecutive, yes.
Okay, so next year we couldn't exercise that option?
No, ma'am.
We're gonna have a raise?
We could, it depends on the CPI. They're bound by CPI, just like these other contracts are. Over the last couple of years, our landfill rate and our rate for Gardenville, and our rate for waste management have actually all gone down to a certain extent due to the CPI.
Good to
And
hear.
without us denying the rate and having the ability, it would be a 6.7%
Yes, sir.
rate increase. Okay.
Back to the hurricane, the non-tree debris that's being picked up now, where is that being disposed of?
We have to minimize that, just like we do the brush. We have to grind the brush. The only way to minimize the C&D is it's being taken out to the same location out at the old airport at Allo Field. They have a large dozer that's going to drive over it and crush it. FEMA accepts that as a reduction in yardage. Then we stack it back up in the trucks, and then it goes to the landfill. It works for us multiple ways. One, we don't want all this debris in one spot in the landfill. It hurts our gas quality. So we've got permission to stack it in a separate place, and then we'll fill it in as we go. This will also keep us from filling up that one area we're in until we're ready to move into a new cell.
But that'll all be done within the year that we're
Yes,
talking about here?
ma'am. We are working really hard to make that 90-day. We may be outside of it, but we won't be much.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks, Daryl.
We're on E5.
E5 is a resolution ratifying a resolution ratifying the programs and expenditures included in the Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation's fiscal year 2017-18 budget and declaring an effective date.
I move to adopt.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? All those in
These are-
favor? Oh, go right ahead.
These are all projects for next year? So people will be happy to know that Crestwood's gonna be started?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, so people will be happy that we're gonna be working on Crestwood, not Crestwood.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Progress continues
So
slowly.
they'll be happy when
And
it's
Red River.
completed. They won't be happy we're starting.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's one thing to know what roads need to be repaired, it's another thing to get them repaired. It just takes
Right,
time,
right.
so you bet. Thanks for pointing that out.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay. E6?
E6 is a resolution accepting the deed to right-of-way property at the corner of Virginia and Lawrence Streets, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to accept the deed and declaring an effective date.
To adopt.
Second.
Second.
Okay, questions?
It's the same lot, it's just the 2 corners on that same lot, right? Because I was looking for a different address.
Yes, ma'am. It's the
Okay.
same lot. It's two different
It's two
areas
different-
of the same lot, and so you see it drawn out on 2 separate drawings there.
Okay.
the leftover from prior years.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Okay, no further questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thank you. E7?
E7 is a resolution ratifying the purchase of an irrigation control system for the municipal golf course inside Riverside Park from Professional Turf Products in the amount of $160,005.36, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the purchase and declaring an effective date.
Council?
I move to adopt.
I'll second.
Thank you. Colby, did you have words of wisdom? No?
Yeah, how are we going to keep this new stuff from having the same problems that the old stuff has? Was it because it was exposed from the water in the hurricane, or?
The floodwaters just got so high.
Okay.
And it, hopefully, normally we try to get those out, but it's in a floodplain. So, I don't know that there's an answer to that is gonna be, yes, that we can guarantee it won't happen again.
Is there any other potential funding sources?
I'm sorry.
Potential funding sources
For this project? Insurance?
I can speak to that. We have some insurance, but it's not the value that high.
Okay.
To answer Ms. Scott, in the future, we plan to have that value at a higher rate on our TML.
I see.
BPI had a lower value on their insurance coverage, which was with our insurance. So we realized that was, in other words, when we took over the golf course, it was valued around the $40,000. It was an old irrigation system. So whenever we replace this system, we're going to bring it back up to about 100, 190, 100, a higher value, so it'll be covered. So we won't have this issue again. In other words, if it's damaged, at least insurance will recover it. Now, to answer your question, we are going to plan to submit this to FEMA. So hopefully that'll be a 90-10 split there. Less insurance.
Can I go back
It's still
to-
gonna be in the floodway. There's
The
no
floodway.
way to take the control
The
boxes out
risk
of
is
the
always
floodway.
there.
Can I go back to Mrs. Scott's question? She says, what are we gonna do to prevent damage again? Because it's gonna flood again. It could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. It's gonna flood again, so, and your answer was?
There's not anything that we can do I mean, you're gonna have just like the stadium or that,
Explain a control box and where it's located on the irrigation system, please.
the control boxes there'll be 36 of them out there. They're scattered around the golf course. Our system is a hydraulic system, and so a pump sends a hydraulic pressure to each one of the different heads, and the control box tells this when to go on and off. When it is turned off, the actual irrigation head comes up, runs its cycle, and then drops back down after a time frame. And so you have to have those control boxes throughout the golf course to be able to tell them when to turn on, turn off. Is that?
So it's the
explain what
control
you-
box full of wires and control boards.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you elevate them?
So the options are dragging hoses and not having a sprinkler system, or insuring it for an adequate amount, if we have one.
Or elevation, or watertight seal box. I think there's a different option to protect them.
I would assume the ones that was there before, how many years were they there? Do you know? Anybody?
No, sir, I don't know
So
the
I'm
answer to
assuming
that.
they've been flooded and dried and flooded and dried, and there was some,
They're probably more
Quasi-
electromechanical than they are electrical now.
okay. I mean,
My
these are all
guess, they're
good
old.
points for Colby
Yeah,
and staff to
absolutely.
consider,
Yeah,
so
no.
maybe y'all can check that out.
I think
and-
some further research needs to be done on that.
So I'll make a motion to table this until we can get further information provided.
Okay, you're ratifying, I've already approved the contract, so, okay.
Well, I don't think we have, well, I don't personally have enough information to say these assets are not gonna suffice. So.
Point of order, there's a motion on the table.
Right, I know that.
But no second.
Y'all-
Okay.
Y'all spoke, there's a second. Yes,
What was the,
Excuse me.
Robert's Rules of Orders, there's a second.
Jeff's point of order is that he made a motion and that another council member, the mayor, spoke after that. And under Robert's Rules of Order, that is considered a second to his motion to table.
Okay, that was not my intent. Is that your intent that that's a second? And you intend to stick to that?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. And the motion was to repeat it?
To table this until we can get the other information that's been asked from Mr. Van Gundy.
Okay. Is there discussion on that? Motion and second.
If we're going to invest this much, we need to make sure that our investment's sound.
Okay. Any further discussion?
This is a ratification, so I feel differently because of that.
What else? So vote for. Everybody understands what they're doing? Make sure you understand what you're doing. Okay. Any further discussion? I see some puzzled
I just have
looks.
one question. Okay, we're ratifying, but limit is $25,000 and this is 160. So how can we ratify when her limit is 25,000 for a contract?
And that is what this process is for, because she has signed a contract that exceeds her authority. That contract is not effective and binding necessarily
Okay,
until
that's-
council ratifies it.
Okay.
And so she has taken action to accelerate the timeline so that they can get started, but there is an understanding that it is a risk that council has to approve it.
Yeah, and the reason I did that is because it's got a 6 to 8 time frame, and you all know that we need an irrigation system going for a golf course, and trying to move the process on to get the irrigation system in place so we can continue to irrigate appropriately. We're doing some watering out there now, though.
This was done before the hurricane.
No, this was the 15th, I think.
Oh, September 15th.
Yes, it was
Sorry.
ordered on September 15th after we
months ran together.
after we
was
realized the
afterward.
damage to the irrigation system.
We'll vote for this
To
amendment.
table it?
With
Yeah,
the table it.
To table it.
And then we would expect you to bring something back differently on the 7th? That'd be the true statement, I suppose. Or information, or to answer any questions. Or to assure that if this is still your recommendation, how you can make sure it won't flood or get damaged or whatever. Okay.
How high would they have to be elevated from the flood of record?
I don't know that I'm able to answer that question.
Okay,
Which would interfere with the golf course.
There's trees everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
yeah. I suppose if you don't,
There were.
But there were.
There were.
yeah. Okay. Any further questions or discussions? I'm gonna call for a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. All those opposed, same sign? Okay, so 4-3, so the motion to table passes.
Correct.
Okay. All right, where are we, Mr. City Attorney? That was the last one?
That is the last one.
Okay, so we'll move, and that, y'all will come back to us with something on that after you, okay.
Yes, sir.
That one will come back.
City manager reports, of course, we did the Texas Landfill Management, Republic Waste Services, and we did that, now our Hurricane Harvey discussion.
This is the agenda item that I'd asked for.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry if I start then?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the time. We just got this presentation that the city prepared, a brief overview of what went on during the hurricane and what recommendations are. I don't think it's good to comment on it right now since I just got the first look at it. And so I kind of wanted to talk about, and the reason I'd ask this to be on there is because as council members, we don't get to visit with each other too much. Open meetings being what they are, we need to be in a published meeting and sit here and all have a good conversation. And so I wanted to make sure we had that opportunity on one of our agendas to talk about, specifically for me, what I experienced during the hurricane and the response, and see how others felt on the council about the same, hurricane and what happened. And if y'all indulge me for a minute, I'll go through some of the notes that I wrote down during the hurricane and when things were happening and what I noticed and where I think we can improve. And please stop me at any time to jump in. And, you know, if you have a different view, that's the reason I wanted to have this discussion, so that we're all trying to make good improvements and things that we see need to be done. So after the hurricane hit, I received many calls early the next morning from citizens wanting to know everything from water to tree limbs, how, you know, everybody was, if you drove around on Saturday morning, you'd notice that everybody was already out trying to clear limbs and everything, and, you know, what brush size does it need to be cut to, and where does it need to be located? All those items were I was getting calls from them. I don't know if y'all were too. A lot of citizens were calling, and I had no idea. I absolutely had no idea of what to tell them. I called to ask for, you know, what's the length of the brush? Do you want it on the street? Do you want it on the side of the curb? Do you want it, which location? Where do you want it? Any rules? And we don't know yet. It was my response, the initial response I got, which, you know, my expectation would be that that would be in the book that we have on emergency preparedness. We would know that when we're clearing debris and what size that whoever we contract with would accept. Excuse me. So that was one issue that I ran across, and communication coming out to citizens was lacking. They had no idea what was going on. You remember, there's no power, no TV. Very few people, I think, listened to radio, and I don't think we were on radio stations. I became kind of frustrated because I couldn't figure out what was going on. I asked if I could come down to the EOC, and I was, you know, told, yeah, sure, if you want to come see what's happening and observe what's going on, that's a good idea. I felt it was a little bit more than that. I didn't want to go down there, of course, and just be a hindrance and just stand there, fly on the wall and watch. If I'm not going to be productive, I don't want to go down there. And then finally, I was visiting my wife at the nursing home when she was working a shift down there, and Dad called and said, hey, I think something's wrong with the plumbing at the house. The second story is starting to lose pressure. I was like, well, that's strange. It shouldn't be a problem. So I called down, speak to city staff and ask, you know, hey, was anything going on with the water? Oh yeah, we don't have any water. That was the first that I got any notification that I could even talk to other citizens that started calling me, because I took the initiative to go and find out, which was fine, but I didn't feel like as a council member I was being kept in the loop of what was going on. I'd like to see something that was better defined in our planning on how to communicate with council members. I think we were very fortunate, and I was frankly surprised that we continued to have cell phone coverage. I thought it was amazing. One of the ways that I think that we could communicate a lot better is through those cell phones. I was driving to Refugio a week after the storm, and my phone went off. And it had to do with a mass text out just to that people that were in the county at the time to say, expect mosquito spraying to start, and this and that. What a great opportunity, and Refugio's figured it out. I think it's something that we could really piggyback off of and learn how to do, because I think everybody found some way to charge their cell phone.
I don't want to interrupt your flow because.
It's okay, I got
But
notes.
you said go ahead and interrupt. And I just want to say that I did receive calls about the water from the city folks, and had the thought of, you know, whose cell phone's working, whose isn't. How am I going to keep this thing charged? Because by then the power was out. But I just wanted to clarify that I received a call as a council person, so.
Was that like on Saturday, or do you remember?
Yes, it was, in fact, it was before the pressure dropped. I received a
Good.
call that it was going to happen because they knew by then.
Okay,
Only point of communication through most of it was through a cell phone. I had no internet, had no electricity if I had internet. And so the only point I had was, and I had to stuff it in my car and charge it. but we talked about, communicating using internet, and I'm not sure how reliable that would be if you have no internet and no phone.
Yeah, I got a little frustrated down there.
There's gotta be some method, I don't know what it is, but
Yeah, because when the
smoke
first thing they
signals
said,
maybe?
on communication, they said, well, we're using Facebook, and there's so many people that don't have Facebook accounts. I know there's probably lots that do have Facebook accounts. I have one, I don't ever pay attention to it. I don't know that I follow the city of Victoria, I don't even know how to follow anything.
Well, let me add to that
Yes.
discussion. I mean, we gave our press releases to every available media outlet. Facebook just tended to be something we noticed that got the most response from. I mean, there wasn't no one else left to give it to, I believe. OC, is that a true statement? Including radio and TV? I don't think we left anyone out. I know we've talked about wishing we had an AM radio. but I
Yeah,
don't
that's
think
exactly right. Basically, our communications plan that's in place
Be brief. I'm
uses,
sorry. I don't-
uses every form of traditional media we have. We send our news releases to the newspaper, we send the news releases everywhere. And if you do have a cell phone, you have internet service, assuming, you have access to the internet on your cell phone. And we did not lose any internet connections.
And I don't want to be argumentative. Let Mr. Buckner continue.
Yes.
I can say this, though, and that's one of the things that we listed as an improvement is, because I heard it too about if you don't do Facebook, so about going back the next time and looking at the information we're putting on our webpage landing page. And definitely, that's an improvement. You'll see that listed in there.
And also, when we came up with that idea that first responders and public works employees weren't talking off the same page either. And one good thing, and I hopefully it makes it into the playbook, is that they get that information right away instead of, everybody is on the same page of what's going on. And so hopefully that'll make it into the book.
I'd also like to interject that none of us were supposed to be here. We were all told to evacuate. It was a mandatory evacuation, and I just really want to stress that because I stayed, which was, I don't know why, I thought it was my duty or something. But seriously, a lot of the complaint, a lot of the concern that we have, while it's valid because we were here, the fact is the message came, don't be here. But do go on.
Yes, but because of the
'Cause
nature
we
of
all
that
stayed.
storm,
Right.
remember, we were sitting in council while the mayor was making that announcement because that storm intensified so quickly. Certainly, we might be talking about different items had we had a 3-day window to evacuate. But also, remember, there are people that do not have the means to evacuate. And there are going to be residents here, even under mandatory evacuation. It's impractical to think we're going to get 100%, so. When I went down there, I went down because I couldn't quite get some of the answers I wanted, and I'd gotten in the truck and started heading down to the EOC for my first time down there. And as I was going down there, I got a call, and Charmel says, "Why don't you just come on down?" I said, "Hey, I'm already on my way. It might be easier to get some of your questions answered." So I went down there, and it was different than what I expected down there. I found it to be a bureaucratic process as things were stepped through. STAR reports getting filed and then sitting back and waiting. STAR report, if you're not familiar with, is the report that you would make for the state. It goes to the DPS officer for resources or what you might need. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a funding mechanism to come back on and document everything. But outside of that, I didn't find a lot of creative thinking and outside the box thinking for solving problems. We knew pretty early on, it seemed like, that we needed generators for raw water treatment, raw water treatments, regional plant. And I know there was requests put in through the STAR system, and we couldn't get an answer for a couple of days. There's no elevation of it. The state officials to help try and push it along. There was no reaching out initially to the great resources we have in this community of all people that we know to find a generator, to find stuff. Finally, as we weren't getting an answer, I think the mayor received a call from a Caterpillar employee, did a great job, found a generator. And within 2 hours of the mayor and I working together, we had a generator lined up, a haul road ready to go put in, dump truck, we had dozer, crane. Everybody committed to being over there. Turned out right at the last minute, they finally gave us the generator specs, and it wasn't gonna work for that type of generator. But the power of thinking outside the box, I didn't find when first went in there and try and tackle some of these problems. And the mayor said it plenty of times, you have the best plan you think you have going in, of course, but things change on the ground quickly.
When, just for information, when was that generator requested from the state? What day? Wasn't it before?
I don't have the star reports in front of me.
Tanner?
I
Can we ask?
think we did that on Saturday. Tanner, do you know? Donald's saying yes. I think we did it on
It was
Saturday.
Okay, I was just curious. I couldn't remember. I was thinking it was pretty early, okay.
Yeah, and then that generator, there's a big generator run that raw water treatment plant, was it 1.2 or 1.6, I'm sorry.
I think it was 1.2.
You run half of it on a
Two.
600, yeah.
Yeah, 1.2 kilowatt generator, it's not one that's just usually laying around easy. But it was supposed to be on its way. And Army Corps of Engineers stopped it. I remember talking to Mr. Reese, I was like, why would the Army Corps of Engineers stop a generator coming down to run either that or the raw water pumps? And when we started getting water and I went out to the raw water pumps, I could see why the Army Corps of Engineers stepped in and said, you're not putting that generator down there. If you've never been out to the raw water pump station by the off-channel reservoir, it looks like an anthill. Dr. Young and I went out there together too, a couple weeks ago with Mr. Reese. It's an anthill. And up on top is the control station, and off in the distance, across the catwalk, are 3 pumps out there to pull water from the off-channel reservoirs. And there's no way to access that when it floods. We had a fantastic citizen that volunteered his airboat to get electrician out there, because even after the initial power started up out there, one of the VFDs, the variable frequency drives that we just approved at last meeting, had fried during the storm. And the other pump was just running. But there's no way to get out there and check it and see if there could be brought up and got going again. The firewater rescue boats are all propeller driven. And you can imagine trying to drive over barbed wire fences, and where do you put your boat in? We pulled the airboat off the trailer with another guy's truck in about that much water, and then proceeded from there. I had to go back out Wednesday because we lost power again to that same pump station. Well, that time the water at the gate was up to your waist, and figured there was no power there. We dropped the legs somewhere, so we went back out with AEP, and in 2 hours' time, it rose about 1.5 feet or 2. AEP wouldn't wade through the water. This was interesting. After we had been wading through the water, they said it might be alive underground there. Kind of scared me. I thought I was foolish for being in there earlier, Michael and I. But to get to that station, we had to cut the barbed wire off the top of the 6-foot fence and took the airboat across the 6-foot fence. Point is, there's no way a generator could have fit out there. There's not a transfer switch. There's not a generator pad. Ill-prepared for any type of flooding event, and should anything happen to that control station that feeds the water to the raw water station, treatment plant. Looking at it now and going back through it again after everything's dried out, I think that whole site out there needs to be reworked so we can get a generator that sits out there. Mr. Reese thinks we may be able to get one that feeds off of natural gas. There might be a natural gas line over there. I think it's something capital project-wise, we need to really look at. And then the surface water treatment plant, definitely a generator out there. I've gotten city staff in touch with a generator company that is looking at a unique program where they actually put the generator out here. It sounds too good to be true, and I hope that it's not. I think we all think it sounds too good to be true, that they'll actually put it out there for nothing and doesn't cost the city anything, and they make it up with some credits and on electric bills. But those items going forward for the raw water, or for the water treatment, really need to proceed forward. And I hope y'all all consider them when they come up, and as we're going through this budget, and there's other items that come up that we had previously thought we were gonna spend capital money on, that maybe we need to put some of those on hold. I look back and I wish that I'd known about this issue. Maybe I should have known, maybe I shouldn't have known, I don't know. But I would have thought long and hard about my vote for upgrading software to the city's website a couple of years ago that was $800,000. And if I had the hindsight to go back and say, that would have been better spent on a generator. The impacts of not having that water were pretty significant. Evacuated 2 hospitals, left nursing homes here with tankless toilets that they had to figure out how to flush. The biggest one that no one ever mentions is we had no fire protection. Everybody seems to go past that. But if something had happened when power came back on downtown and we had no water, we could have lost all of downtown. It's scary to think about what could have happened. I'm glad and thankful it didn't. And I know the fire department was aware of it, and they had all their pumper trucks full of water so they could fight whatever they could. But we didn't have that fire, so we were very, very lucky.
Do you mind if I
No,
add something? You know, I've said this before, we're all pretty much type A personalities, and we're gonna look for what needs to be done better the next time. You know, we learned from Claudette, we needed a debris contract. But just kind of to be a little interactive, we have reached out to CDM engineering firm to help us to get a scope of service on hardening those facilities. So some of the ideas that you're mentioning, absolutely, we need to look at the road and generators, whether it's permanent or available, you know, switches so we can do rentals. But so that's been in progress on getting the scope of service from them.
but yeah, because I noticed when we were touring, and I didn't realize this, but Pumping Station 3 has a transfer switch already there, and that's fantastic. That makes getting that generator there and plugging in and getting back up and going that much easier and that much quicker.
And another really good thing is there's some interesting new sources of revenue that I'm getting contacted by daily that are very, very promising to help us do a lot of these things without impacting our current budget. So I'm real excited.
Yeah, the Rebuild Texas project that John Sharp is heading up through the governor's office, you know, they've asked for a list of things that we would like to, you know, look at on a mitigation process. Project.
You know, if we'd gotten that rain that Houston got, we'd have a whole different list of items to look at. And after we go through the ones that we can identify from what we experienced, I think those are worthwhile just looking forward. If we had gotten that rain and we'd gone above the 34 feet to the 36 to 38 they were predicting, some of these pump stations, control rooms would have been under. And I think specifically the one that is actually the feed pump to the OCR. Looking back at my pictures that I took, I can see those controls getting awful close. I know they're submersible pumps, so I'm not worried about the pumps, but the controls.
Well, when the surface water treatment plant was built, it was built after the 1998 flood. So that was, you know, it was built above that, so.
Yes, I think that one's fine. It's just, like I said, that one that's right there on the river, my goodness. And I don't know what if a log comes down and hits it, or I need to look at it from all that perspective of some debris and stuff. The other thing I think we need to look at is our.
But I'm sorry,
sure.
Mr. Balknight. And again, we can go to those, our groundwater wells too. So if, you know, we end
But we
up.
need to make sure that we get those all in working condition as well, and
Yes,
we
sir.
exercise them and use
Yes, sir.
them, and
That's also, they're in good shape right now, and Donald has set up a program where they'll be exercised under full load quarterly. So, yes, that's been done.
in the procedures for preparing for a hurricane, in the limited research I've done, it seems that the best method is to fill your water towers full. It protects against wind damage. You've got more of a ballast there, more weight. And then to valve them off so that you have fire protection in case you lose your water. I know we didn't valve off. I wish, looking back, we had. I don't know how we have it in the manual, but I think it really bears good discussion on that procedure on why you'd let it flow versus why you'd let it hold. And
What's the impact if you valve off? What does that mean for the community? Does that mean the water stops for them?
water does stop.
The water
But you
stops.
have fire protection. So you save one thing, because if you're not able to refill them, or if you have no ability to refill them, you don't want to just, this is my opinion and what I've read, you don't want to just release that water for people to fill up their bathtubs, and it's going to be gone. The
Well,
best,
you-
we might have had 6 hours worth.
You have a calculated decision to make at that point in time,
Yes.
because you got a group working on some pumps with the assumption those pumps are gonna come on and you won't have to valve off. So that's where you flip that coin. But point is taken. I mean, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
And also, if you valve off and then, because I'm just learning what that means, and then turn it back on again. Best of all worlds, you've valved off, but now you're going to turn it back on. Does that trigger the boil notice?
Absolutely, it
likely,
does.
yeah.
It does.
The minute you valve that off, you're going to trigger your boil water
Okay.
notice.
And I don't quite understand why we lost all the wells, because not all the power was lost in the whole town. So we always have those wells as a backup.
I mean, and I know that staff's ready to talk about that
I mean,
whenever
no, I mean,
we're
we're-
done,
no.
Donald can probably wants to talk about
And perhaps,
No, I mean,
it. Go ahead, no,
Never mind.
continue.
no, absolutely.
anyway, that's our whole three-legged stool on water supply is the wells, OCR and the ASR.
But I think, with the impacts of not having water at all, and then the other effects of boil notice, and I know it's a turbidity problem, and it probably would have cleared up a lot faster had we not gotten flooded right after the hurricane. But there were a lot of people affected, a lot of hourly employees infected by restaurants not being able to open. It's just, I think that in the future, we can avoid this, as far as we can.
I thank
do
you
it.
for that, because we can and I'm not going to disagree with you. We do need to do some improvements in some areas. There's no doubt about that. And I think the Public Works Director and I have been talking about that, and we'll be back to council. But I think it's important that, we can't ever prevent something from totally happening. So we can do our best job to do that. I don't want the public to ever believe if we go through these measurements and we do these
never-
generators in the road, it doesn't mean that in 10 years, if we get hit with another, a landfall of a 4 and that comes in at 2 or higher, that we might not lose the water system. So, I just don't want the public to believe we're making promises that we have no control over.
Right.
But I do agree that we need to do our best to prevent anything that we can in the future.
And I'm not advocating hardening it to a nuclear
No, I understand.
energy
You got
standard.
to find weak links in the chain and shore
Right,
them
but,
up.
I think that there was a fallacy in thought that the 2 transmission lines feeding that treatment plant didn't constitute a single point of failure. They both land at the same location. And I see it as a single point of failure on a system. Doesn't matter that one comes from Corpus and one comes from San Antonio, they still end at the same spot, so they have to approximate sometime. You have a wind event like we did, in
And-
close
and-
proximity to that, then.
And when it was designed, that was the redundant system. So, and I understand what you're saying, and you know, 17 years later, this is the first time it's happened, so.
And that's my question as well. How was it designed? Was it built as it was designed? No one seemed to know for sure.
I know
Was it
that
built
there was
as
a
designed? The Titanic was built as designed. It had multiple failure points. And when you look at it, it's no single failure point. The generator should have kept up. They didn't. The control panel wasn't weather-tight, a NEMA 4. There were other things. Then was it designed that way? And then was it built to design? Or what could we do different? Now, a disaster is still a disaster, like the Titanic. But you look back and say, you know, we're not gonna make watertight doors like that anymore.
well, I
And that's
haven't
about the
seen
best you can do.
I
It's
haven't
still a
seen the
tragedy.
white whale, but as it was described to me, that there would never have guessed it would have been watertight.
We've never had a water failure ever in our recorded history either.
I know a
Now, plan
generator
for
was
something that's never
discussed at the
happened.
time that thing was built, but I don't think it was incorporated into the design.
Well, that's what I'd like to know myself. Was it designed? Was that the best design of its time? Does that design need to be improved?
In this council, I think most of us were on this council with the new 4.4 million, the new plant, wastewater plant. And you know, it's got a great, big, beautiful generator and it worked great. And of course, we're not gonna hear about that. You know, y'all were there. We did the grand opening, what, 6, 8 months ago? And that's good. So
yeah,
I don't
think-
know why back in 1992 or 94 it wasn't done over there.
These are all very good
But-
points and well
Yeah,
taken,
yeah.
so, and appreciate it.
The traffic light signals. City of Austin was phenomenal. We've sung their praises since they stepped into our city. Again, the 5-day lag from when the request was put in, I found to be too long. I just wish we would have elevated that up. We have a great resource in the state that is our representative and chaired this session's transportation department. I think she would have been a great resource to call and ask for help. As soon as we got, you know, some pushback that we were not gonna get anything. It was a great need that we had. We all know how dangerous those intersections were, and I'm glad we were able to finally work it out, but just asking for help is not a bad thing. And we have great people up there in Austin that will, you know, try and help us. Just to sum up how I felt about everything is, you know, I think we need to improve on communication. I think we need to take a hard look when we get to capital projects, make sure that we're getting the right stuff from staff, that we are looking out for bigger what-ifs. I'm going to be a lot more diligent on capital outlays. You might have seen that already tonight with the sprinkler boxes. Could $160,000 go towards a generator to make sure I don't have to worry about that raw water pump station anymore. So there's going to be some tough questions when it comes to some of these other capital projects from me, and it's with these other items that I know we need to fund and limited funding that we do have to be able to make sure we provide the basic services before we go provide the niceties.
Council, do y'all, I know the city manager has somewhat of a presentation, and some of this may answer. I think there's some good points in there. I'd like to hear it.
Sure.
Would y'all like to hear from Mr. Reese as well and regarding the water system? I think this would be the time to do it. I'm not in a hurry. Charmel, why don't
Into
you
this,
step through what you,
presentation?
I'm sorry?
Is his response built into the presentation? If it is.
It is, however much you want to, he's prepared to talk, but when Mr. Balknight asked for a work session, I took it as he wanted, you know, staff to come back with a presentation on kind of what we've learned, and and that's what the PowerPoint is.
I would like
but,
you to, I would like you to do it, yeah.
My main wasn't for the presentation, it was to be able to have a good dialogue and with everybody up here because we just don't get that opportunity. And, you know, if y'all had different experiences, I'd love to hear about it because I can't go ask each one of y'all separately.
I'd like to throw in just a couple things before the presentation, and that's that from my experience, I thought that Charmel and Paul and the city and the communication, I thought they did a phenomenal job. And I was, because they had, yes, there's a playbook, but not really. You don't know what's going to be thrown at you. And they did have to respond to a lot of things quickly and off the cuff. And it's easy to look back and say, gosh, if they'd just called so-and-so, they would have gotten that answered. But when the winds are whirling around you and you're getting phone calls and all those other sorts of things, I thought they were doing a great job, and I'd like to thank them both, just personally. I had some times when Christ Kitchen needed a generator, and every place was closed, and they asked me if I knew of anything. Well, I think this was probably after the generator for the raw water had been looked for, so they had a line on lots of generators, but they were able to give me some context because Christ Kitchen needed a big generator. I guess it was a higher wattage, but they were able to give me some information. So, and that was not necessarily the things that they were called upon to do. And yes, Facebook was mostly where I was getting my information, and I was then, and I've said this before, I was taking screenshots and I was texting them to everybody that I knew, but I mean, it's true, everybody doesn't have Facebook. But the one other thing that I really did experience is that the message that I got was the same every time I got it, regardless of where I got it from, including from the city workers that were driving the streets when we were pulling brush out of the inlets. We got the same messages from them. But the messages that we never got were messages of panic, messages of we don't have a solution. The messages were there's a problem, but here's the solution also. It may not be the solution you like. You got to boil your water, but here's the solution. And I really appreciated that. Certainly appreciated the way the citizens responded. We all got to know our neighbors, got to know our distant neighbors. But I think that they handled things phenomenally. Listening to the mayors today at the Texas Tribune, we were doing things in that first week that some of the other cities weren't doing for several weeks afterwards. And it's long enough has passed, we're back to some state of comfort. But I thought they did great, and that was my experience.
Just one thing, I'm not approaching this as looking back because I did get to spend a lot of time on the water issue. And I'm trying to tell it from a firsthand standpoint, not from I wish they would have done this. It was what I was seeing while I was in there, dealing with the problem with the mayor in Charmel. I'm not saying that I'm just looking from afar back at it and saying, telling you what I was experiencing. And I did see tons of improvement. Later in that week, something else came up again for a generator, and everybody knew, someone to call, and they knew who, by that time, let's call Tiger Industrial, and I know the yard manager over there, and I was glad to see that change from the bureaucracy path to let's just go solve the problem. And let's go call these people that we know that are willing to help and everybody in the community wants to help. So I did see that. It just took 5 or 6 days to get there.
Well, anytime you have a failure or a tragedy, you always want to look at and see what you've done different, could have done differently. But you never know until after the tragedy has occurred. Again, like an airline crash, no one thing will bring down an airline. It takes a sequence of 3 minimum to bring down an airline. And so sometimes I look at this as sequential failures. Can we harden those points or make it better? Yeah. But that's armchair quarterback, and, you know, yes, we need to move forward and learn our lessons. But when something has never occurred in our total recorded history, I hate to think that we can sit here and say, gee, we didn't do this right. And that would be incorrect. Because either engineering or we didn't build to the engineered design. Or maybe that was the best engineering for 1992. Maybe it needed to be looked at periodically. But it wasn't a human failure per se.
Well, some of it was when we look at our operational procedures.
True.
You don't test a generator by seeing if it starts. That's not how generators test it. They can fire up. You have to test them under load. State requires
Absolutely.
nursing homes to test them under load.
Absolutely.
If the government's requiring private entities to test their generators to a higher standard than what the government's doing, we got a problem. We need to be testing and holding ourselves to those same standards. Government's not better than private citizenry,
Absolutely.
and we weren't load testing those like we should.
Didn't know that. Did you know that? Prior to this, neither did I.
Nope.
Why don't we
No, but
go,
I mean,
let's step
the
through
point
this.
is, it's staff's responsibility to do that. And I think in some of our generators, we were doing under load, and some we were not. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's, yes,
I have a
ma'am.
comment. One of the things that I know went wrong was the center, the St. Joseph Dome.
Yes, ma'am.
That went seriously wrong. We need to really take a look at the bathrooms, the staffing there. There wasn't enough of anything out there. Basically, it was just come and you bring your bed or whatever, and the accommodations weren't like they were supposed to be. I mean, I don't know that they had cots or anything, but these people were sleeping on the floor. They were, they abused the place. We need to have some sort of rules or some way of communicating what can and cannot be brought and what can and cannot be expected. People wanted food, they wanted Pampers, they wanted milk, they wanted all sorts of things. And, that has to be looked at because that was a disaster.
Well, one thing, the city's not responsible for the shelters. So opening those up, we do provide security for them. So, I'll make sure that,
Well,
the
that's
shelter-
part of the
yes,
whole
it is.
thing
It's
that we
part
have
of
to
the whole
look
thing,
at.
yes. And my focus, you'll see in the presentation, are things that we have control
Well,
over.
I understand, but I'm just saying
No,
that's
I
one of the
understand.
things
And-
that just like,
Yes, ma'am.
maybe we can talk about bringing in somebody to run it or whatever.
Well,
just like-
there's shelter teams that are responsible for running shelters. Red Cross is normally the primary, and that didn't go real well during this incident. So,
I think there's some confusion about what that shelter is. It's for sheltering in place while a storm occurs. It's, you bring your whatever you need. It's not a stay until you can,
Holiday.
Yeah,
forever. It's about a 24-hour deal. It's maximum. It's supposed to be occupied, from my understanding of it. And it's supposed to be returned to the school, whether it's Bloomington or St. Joe, in the condition that it was
right,
presented. And yeah, there were some big problems with that,
yes.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the Red Cross, and
That
they
was their
brought
failure?
cots and set it up, and
Yeah.
One other item that really needs to be brought to the attention of EOC is that volunteer portion,
BOAD,
the BOAD.
VOAD.
yeah.
And I think you two certainly know that, but I want to make sure the public knows. My opinion of it is it didn't work. In the sense that there were organizations that contacted me that wanted to come provide free hot meals for people. Question I had, first, of course, I went to Mrs. Garrett, is where do we have them set up? They're coming as soon as the storm's passed. And, I don't know, she had plenty on her plate, I understand, but don't know where to set up. Call this VOAD group. Yeah, no clue. You had no clue what to do. So I ended up enlisting the help of Randy Vivian, and he contacted, the university and see if we couldn't set up in Town Plaza Mall or somewhere. But I didn't find that any of the answers were ever given at VOAD, or they didn't know what to do. And,
One of the things with respect to VOAD, the judge and I had a conversation about vetting the membership of that group through him and I, or our representative bodies, to see that the people that make that up are capable. We did have a serious problem there. I want to make one real big point here. It seems that this city's, the government, and I understand this, is responsible for every aspect of this, which is absolutely not true. But we'll certainly talk about it, and there's nothing wrong with us all having that discussion, but a lot of these problems, the county was heavily involved, the health department, and then, the volunteers, and so you're right. I mean, we all learned a great deal, but unfortunately, we tend to bear the brunt of it, it appears, constantly. That's okay, I don't mind that. But with VOAD, that discussion has to still take place, because you're absolutely right. There were so many other wonderful faith-based organizations that stepped in to fill a lot of those voids.
yes.
It was very frustrating to not get a response from that group, because even from the fundraising aspect for the charitable side, they were absent. We got a late start. It cost us a lot of money. So it's lessons learned.
Yeah, just trying to get the ice and water distributed and getting volunteers down there. We're gonna start it off with the firemen and the policemen down there handing stuff out. And there's tons of groups in town we should have in our playbook to be able to call. Say, hey, need your help, step up, help
Yeah.
set some stuff up. That should all be in there. And I know that the city doesn't, it's not really a city department. We participate in all the EOC meetings, hopefully. And department chairs go there, department heads. I'm hoping everybody's attending when all these planning goes on for years when there's nothing happening.
Well, I just want to throw into the mix, though. I mean, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but Saturday, as you said, people were already out. Sunday, I volunteered to go over to the community center and pass things out. Driving over there, I said to myself, this was probably the stupidest thing you ever did. You're driving around limbs, there are no traffic lights, there are down lines. You should have stayed, you should have left. And because you didn't leave, you should still be in your house like you have told everybody else, do not get out. And so I just want to say, when you're saying there were lots of people in town that wanted to volunteer, yes, a lot of us did, but there was a time when I guess we needed the law enforcement or government or somebody other than us volunteer groups who didn't have the sense to not drive around those logs.
I know it's been discussed that group didn't get started quickly enough, and I think going forward, it's a group that will be a little more active and used, at least, I won't say drilled, but, planning will be a little better. And I know that the OME has, offices, we've talked about that. So it's not, like I said, we always want to get better. And lessons learned, and that's an area. So just like the shelters, Victoria is considered a pass-through community because we are so close to the coast. But we do have to have shelters, but again, that's another division, but it's all being talked about. I have to remind people, we're just 7 weeks past the hurricane.
7 months,
So, and,
Feels like 7 months.
Yeah.
but it's been a very short time, and we're still in a recovery mode, and we still have a lot to do. So,
When you talk about the VOED, is that phone line that you would call?
yes, ma'am.
There was a lot of people who were frustrated with that because they would, they wouldn't get answers and they wouldn't pick up the phone. There was and these were people that were desperate, they were really wanting to know something that was important to them at the time. Okay.
All right time, or do you want to wait until after they go through this to talk about housing?
We can do housing now. Do you have some thoughts?
Well, it was interesting today, if you saw or went to the luncheon. I guess the paper came up with a number of over 6,000 displaced residents in the city. I certainly hope that's not the case. I know there's a lot of apartments that have been damaged and have mold and mildew. There's probably some people that need to leave their homes but can't because of mold and mildew. And I know it's not specifically the city's responsibility to provide housing for these people and everything, but what's the best avenue for people besides hitting a brick wall with FEMA? Is there one? And I don't know that there has to be an answer right now.
Well, let me address the numbers issue because I can't verify any of that. After that luncheon, I talked to FEMA, I talked to Ernie with the DRC, I've talked to Rick McBrayer. I can find no confirmation of any numbers. I'm still trying to figure that out. No confirmation on number of destroyed homes, of course, destroyed, according to FEMA, is more than 51% damage, I believe. So I have no good information on numbers. As far as the paper concerned, I don't know where they get this stuff. Maybe they can answer that. But I'm still working on that because I do want to verify it. It keeps coming back.
That's one-tenth of our population.
As Ernie
Is it a true fact
told
or
me
is it a
that,
sensationalistic headline?
well, I was told that if we had
I
6 to
would like to
7.
know myself.
I was told if we had 6,000 to 7,000 displaced, we'd have a tent city, so we don't have that. But, we're at the mercy of FEMA. FEMA's not an insurance company. I think I said that at lunch. I would not rely on FEMA necessarily to take care of me as an individual. They're there as a stopgap to keep people from living outside. I get that, I understand that. And it's difficult to get information. My contact, I have talked to every day for several days about stuff, and she's working to get me answers to some of those questions about numbers. So, first of all, we have to have good information, Is it 27 families, or is it 2,700 families? I don't know.
And how is the information, as far as you understand, supposed to be fed into FEMA, so they're the record keeper of?
People have to register, and they're very aggressive at that. I get an email, I want to say almost daily. It's got totals for the region, 37,000, and I don't know these exact numbers, have registered, and then they go through that process. And yes, it's frustrating to everyone. We do not qualify for trailers because we do not have the destroyed homes, as has been said. So there's no, at this time, and I have no knowledge that trailers will be provided, but they may, And I know the 7 of you guys, if we need to set something up and waive some stuff and to make that happen, we probably would. I don't know how, you know what I'm saying. The city should not be an obstacle to housing. I don't want us to be an obstacle, but we do not provide housing. Lord knows, we're talking about fretting over having money for a generator, much less paying for people's housing. I think the citizens of Victoria have done a wonderful job of helping each other, as it should be, and family. I heard a story where, and not to belabor the point, but that you had students living in cars. I said, you send that first student in a car to my house because I got a place to put them. No one's taking me up on that. So there's a lot of information that gets embellished. I don't know. So.
Yeah, that one story, I think that that lady that asked you a question today at lunch about moving in a mobile home temporarily, and they wouldn't let, supposedly the city wouldn't let them occupy until they skirted the trailer. And Mayor answered it correctly, said the city's not here to, put undue restrictions. If that skirt doesn't get put on for 2 years and someone needs a place to live, and there's ways to do that. I don't think the city should be hindering that in any way. So,
And I have no way of knowing if that's accurate or not.
I know.
And I'm not sure if Julie even I don't see Julie's face out there, but I don't. So,
No requests have been made of such, okay.
and I can tell you this, that Julie and John and I have been in conversations now probably 3 weeks on looking at areas where we might need to bring forth variances to council to help facilitate people that need to move in, mobile homes or even, you know, RVs where they're reconstructing their homes and things like that. And we recognize that, you know, it's a time that we need to be very facilitative. So, so that's our approach. And of course, you know, it may have to come to you for a waiver, but that's not our variance. That's our plan, so.
By the same token, I want to be, you know, careful and clear that we're not giving a carte blanche to that because we do have restrictions in place for protections of neighborhoods. And, you know, we need to look very carefully at the long-term impacts of the decisions that we make trying to solve a short-term problem.
I've had very few people contact me directly about it, but I have had a few. You know, hey, I can't pay my bill, I don't know what to do. And fortunately enough, I have enough contacts with faith-based organizations that I've passed those phone numbers on, and they've gotten help. I assume, I don't hear back typically, but I thank you. So,
In this discussion, we're talking about our own perceptions of what we saw after the storm. And I had people in my neighborhood, people that knew me, calling me on the cell phone, asked me questions. And the biggest thing I saw was rumors were wild and going crazy. I mean, the police were gonna shoot you if you came back to your house the stupidest things that you wouldn't even make up in a bad fiction movie. That was the biggest problem I had, just trying to fight that stuff. Though the sky is not falling, yes, we'll get through this. No one's hurt, good. Let's start cleaning up.
Well, and
That's what I found.
OC addressing those on Facebook, I mean, that became a big issue. Thank you.
okay. Next time I expect every one of us to call every citizen in town and inform them of everything going on, that, you know. Sometimes that's what the expectation is. That's not reality. We do the best we can. Is that, so we were on housing. Any thoughts or anything
The
else?
only thing I was going to say on housing was that TML, I ran into the mayor from Cuero, and she says, whatever y'all do, don't get FEMA trailers. We still have FEMA trailers from the flood of '98, and I don't know what to do with them, she says.
I do know FEMA has changed their process since, you know, Katrina and those, they learned, you know, valuable lessons. But
There is a local contractor working with them that's, as far as staging, that I'm aware of, because he called me and talked to me. I don't want to say who, but, so there's efforts. I don't know that, those will not be used locally, though, I don't think.
Our community does not qualify for FEMA trailers.
But I did read that you were opening up the RV park if anybody needed to stay somewhere.
We're working on that. We had flood damage in there. An
Okay.
electrical panel has to be replaced.
Okay.
So I have approved it to be replaced, and it doesn't require ratification. It's within my limits. So we are working to get that opened up as quickly as possible. And for those that, you know, we have deadline, timeframes that you can stay in there, but for those that are, you know, displaced, we're going to work with those folks that are displaced. So.
Okay.
But until we get the electrical
Okay,
panel fixed, we
electrical, okay,
can't.
that's fine.
Yes.
Now, going on that theme, if you have a contractor that came from out of town and just needs a place to stay, can he park there?
Yes, ma'am. It's
Okay.
open to the public, you know, when we get it back opened
Okay,
up.
that's
Yes, ma'am.
fine.
Okay, so housing, y'all want to take a look at this preparation, or excuse me, presentation? Mr. Brown?
Sure do.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think James is going to cue me up. And James, I may need you to drive if you don't mind for me. I appreciate all the comments. The constructive criticism is always very well taken because, like I said earlier, you know, we learn from each incident and we'll get better every time. And I also recognize it was a tremendous inconvenience with the water. But what I want to remind the public is, you know, this is, we have not had a natural disaster to this effect since 1961 when Hurricane Carla made landfall around Port O'Connor. So it's been 56 years since this community has sustained the damage that they sustained. And we had 500 and something employees that worked around the clock to make sure that services were provided to the citizenry. And at times, they did that when they weren't taking care of their own stuff. So I want to thank our group of employees that went way beyond and above their normal call of duty, because I think they did an incredible job. My leadership team also did an incredible job, and I appreciate Mr. Balknight's comment about out-of-the-box thinking, and it's not my place to argue with him. But I think we did a lot of out-of-the-box thinking. I know at the time that you were there, maybe it wasn't to your standard. But I think my leadership team did a tremendous job trying to make sure we kept services going. So, but again, I appreciate, he and I had those conversations at the moment that they occurred, and I appreciate his comments and his wisdom that he brought to the table, and, looking for resources. So, it was a tremendous help. But what I've done, James, what I did, I went back and I realized we're not looking at the past, but sometimes you have to look at the past to move forward. And for the public, I put together kind of the timeline where we started, and this is based on the Emergency Operations Center. Normally, we're at a level 4, which means there's not anything going on. So on Wednesday, we were between a 3 and a 4, which meant that we were, preparing for a possible tropical storm, or on Wednesday, a Category 2. It ramped up pretty quickly, and you all know that. So by Thursday, we were at a level 1, expecting that hurricane to hit mid to upper coast. And so that's, as Mr. Balknight referred to, that's the day that we ordered, the mayor and the judge ordered a voluntary evacuation at noon. And then by 5 o'clock, because it had intensified, it was increased to a mandatory. And the domes were opened at Bloomington and St. Joe as those community safe rooms, the FEMA domes, as sometimes people refer to them. So the time frame there goes from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I'm not going to read all this because I know it's getting late. But one thing I want to point out is on Saturday, AEP, who is our major electrical retailer in town, made us aware that we had over almost 23,000 customers without electricity. So pretty much, they have a little over 29,000 customers locally. So pretty much everybody in the city was out of electricity. So, but by Sunday, they started restoration, and they had 24% of the people up and running. The evacuation order was lifted for most of the community, except for those low-lying areas, because we need to remember, we had a hurricane with wind and rain, but then we had a major river flooding event. So, again, the river crested on Wednesday at 31.25 feet, which is the second highest crest we've had, the 98 flood of record, and now this one. So not only have we had a major hurricane, Category 2, when it got inland to us for at landfall, we've also had a record river flooding. So, and not noted on here, but we knew that because of no electricity, and even though we were pushing out as much communication possibly, those residents in those low-lying areas might not realize or might have forgotten that river was fixing to flood. So our police department went door to door in those areas, knocking on doors to make sure the residents knew that the river was coming up, and they really needed to leave if they didn't know that. And I think because of that effort, we didn't have to do we didn't have any deaths during this time period, which was a blessing for our community. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that our public safety people were out making people aware of that. So, but by Wednesday, you'll also know that 93% of the AEP customers had been restored. So Councilman Young and I were not among those 93%. It took us a lot longer to get our electricity back. So we didn't. But we had roads.
There's no special favors.
There was no special favors. But anyway, so that's a timeline if you ever want to go back and reflect on it. It doesn't include everything, but it's up to that flood crested, the river crested. So I start off with public information. It lists what OC and the team, and of course, there's a representative from the county that also sits on that public information team. The mediums they used, Facebook, Twitter, emails, and 37 updates and 178 posts. It was mentioned that they were also chasing rumors down, which I think they spent a lot of time. There was 4 people in that room doing public information at all times. Since the 98 flood, we've instituted a live phone bank where a person answers the phone, which gives out information. So they took 8,000 calls during that period of time when we were in the Emergency Operations Center, so which is a lot of calls. And, sometimes people need to hear a voice and know what's going on. So we did 4 emergency alerts during that time, and 75 to 90 live interviews. The areas of improvement I've got listed here, major ones, is we didn't have a designated time for elected officials to do press conferences. We started off, we did a few, we started doing podcasts, but going forward, we will have a time that the mayor and the judge will have a designated time to do press conferences. And that will be in addition to all the other media outreaches we do. We won't stop that. We do not have an AM radio station here that can do feeds. If you were using a weather radio because you didn't have electricity, you were hearing about Houston's flooding. You were not hearing about Victoria. So we're going to have to explore ideas on what to do to get how we're going to overcome that in the future, especially if we ended up losing our cell towers.
Do you notice it says AM station but not FM? 'Cause
I'm
some of
sorry?
the local FM stations were giving updates at times.
But if you're using a weather station radio, you're only going to get an AM feed. I'm sorry.
The FM station did read what we gave them.
Yes, oh, absolutely, and they were getting the, the media, the releases went out to all the medias locally, so, but we need to start a media campaign on encouraging people to sign up for the emergency alert messages. We have so many people on cell phones now, and they can do that by logging on to the Victoria County's website and going to the emergency, Office of Emergency Management and sign up for that emergency alert. But that's something that we're going to need to work on, and in conjunction with the OEE, to get people to sign up for those emergency alerts, because that's important.
You think that's different than what Refugio used?
I'm not sure what Refugio used on the text messages. Is it the same thing, OC, or I'm not sure.
Rick, I don't know if Rick has more details or not. It is a different system.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I did make a note of that, so, but
I don't think it's something you have to sign up for, because obviously I hadn't signed up for their EOC. I was just driving through the county.
Sure.
Like an Amber Alert?
Kind of like that. Yeah, I mean, it just, once you hit the cell towers probably in that county.
Oh, I have to wonder if it's not those emergency alerts you get through.
State might have been doing it.
The Amber Alerts?
No, you can also get weather emergency alerts, but you said that was spring, but we'll look at it.
I mean, it's just like,
No, we'll be
I don't know
glad
if
to
they have
look
the
at it.
ability to
Yeah.
just hit the towers that are in that county,
Yeah, I don't know.
and that reaches every phone that's within that.
Yes, sir. I did make a note of that. So, and then I had already mentioned additional information on the website landing page for those that do not do Facebook. The next one is public safety. Their call volume increased exponentially. The numbers there, the 911 calls, 10,986, calls for service with 2,557. Fire responded to 824 calls between August 23rd and September 6th. That's exceeds their average, but they did a great job. Our public safety sector, there's not a whole lot here, but they do an incredible job. They, do a lot of training on response. So kind of went according to plan for them. But some of the areas of improvement, we realized for an extended event, we need to be able to rotate the personnel out of the EOC. When you're down there, 72 plus hours or more, all week long, we've got to increase that ability to rotate, which is increasing depth in our organizational structure. I mentioned PD, their task at the shelters exceeded what they're really supposed to be doing. It goes back to Ms. Solis, which you mentioned about managing the shelter. So hardened PD in order to house the officers during incidents. That's just a matter of having a switch for a generator to be dropped in. So that City Hall and Police Department's a very stout building. It's well built in the 60s. So, and then we need to look at hardening stations 1, 3, and 5. Those are the ones that were not built to hurricane standard. You may remember the 3 new stations, 2, 4, and 6, were built for Cat 4. So I can also sit up here and clearly remember the criticisms that we were considering spending that additional money to do that, but the councils at the time finally agreed to do it, and I think it paid off and just with this one incident. So, but those 1, 3, and 5 are very old stations. We're going to look and see what we can do to help.
Will you please make sure that the engineer doing the study for a new police facility on the needs of it or not, looks at it also through this lens?
Absolutely. No, it will need to be a hardened facility so we can house those, police officers during incidences. Absolutely, no.
Quick question in your headings, you've got police and you've got fire, but that's the fire department, that's not calls about fire.
No, that's just the fire department. That's medical, fire.
Thank you.
All calls, yes, ma'am. So, the next one's development services, and a note here that they opened the development services division up on Tuesday, the 29th, which was, day before the rest of the city got opened. And we did that because we knew contractors probably needed to start getting permits, and they did. So, and they worked Saturdays and to try to accommodate the public. You can see the total permits, and that's through October 12th. It's easy, they've issued 1,921 total permits. And on average, when Julie went back and looked at the last 2 years to give a good average, we average about 3,740 a year. So you can see that's a little over 51, 52% that we've issued just in this very short period of time. And of course, 55% of those are re-roofs, 2% re-roof for commercial. So I'm going to stop. I don't have it there. And it's more of a commercial for the public. When you've got a roofing company that's re-roofing your house, you need to ask for the permit. And you need to check the permit to make sure it is your address when they show you that permit. That permit should be posted at your home, and it should match your address. And it's also very important you understand that they call for an inspection when that, I think it's at 90%, Julie, that it needs to be inspected. What our inspectors have found is that some of the roofing companies are covering the vents with their felt, which is not going to be a good situation for that homeowner. So we're asking the homeowners to please be sure that those inspections are being called for. So that's critical, and we're noticing a lot of that. So, but you can see the total number of license that we've issued during this time period. Again, it exceeds what we normally do in a year. Julie provided the dollar amount of fees waived. I know council approved that. So you can see total until October 12th is $34,000 of fees waived. Red tax, they've done 41 red tax already. That's again, when they're doing inspections and finding things that are wrong. And that's for the protection of the homeowner or the, business. So you can see that that's doubled what they normally do. So areas of improvement in that area, we believe that we need policies up front on what council's belief is on waivers for disasters, and so we've got those in place. And Julie would like for us to talk about contractor license requirements going forward, so we'll be bringing some recommendations back to council on that. The next one's environmental service. We immediately activated the Ashbrook contract on the 25th. They started moving debris from the roadways on Monday, the 28th. And they couldn't start that until AEP started getting lines up and making sure it was safe. So that's a very quick turnaround for the damage we had. If you did get out and drive on Saturday and Sunday, you saw the amount of debris that was in the road and lines down in the road. So that was AEP did an incredible job responding, and then Ashbrook got going with the roadway removal. So on that Tuesday, we opened up 2 temporary locations for residential garbage drop-off, which gave, I called it a relief valve for our, people that were losing food and having to clean out freezers and, their refrigerator needed a place to go. And if you were unfortunate to have a Friday pickup, you didn't get picked up that Friday on the 25th. So think that went very well. We had a lot of people use those drop-offs until we got ready to start picking trash up again. We started back on September 4th, which when Daryl told me that he felt like we could start curbside recycle back up a week later, I kind of looked at him and wondered, if he was sleep deprived at that point. But he got it done, and, allowing the residents to use those recycling carts, I think, was a big help. So, but we continue on with environmental, and, we started back curbside yard waste pickup on the 18th of September. We started curbside recycling on October 2, and I believe we got more calls for people wanting to know when we're going to start recycling than I think we would have ever expected. So, and Daryl mentioned earlier, we started the construction and demolition debris on the 6th. So, we think we need to work on our strategy on communication communication for storm debris pickup, do a little better job on what that message is early going out. There was times that it was kind of like, is this going to be done or is this not going to be done? But we'll work on that and have a, kind of a template that's ready to go if this ever happens again. So, and then, you all know we ran into the issue with Waste Management not able to handle the commercial pickup for construction debris. So maybe a strategy going forward on that, on how we'll have something in place for them. I think y'all all got your questions answered about brush, but is there any more got that all out of the way? So the library, you may remember the library sustained quite a bit of damage in the library, but also in the Bronte room. So we were not able to open the library up right away. We did it with modified hours on September the 13th. One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting is the library, if you had books on hold or books ordered, they were letting you pick those up out of the back door when they were closed. So I happened to be down there at a time where we had a couple of people waiting at the back door to get their books. So I thought that was pretty creative and satisfying those patrons' needs. But they resumed normal operations on the 18th, except for the Bronte room is still closed today, and they've moved story time off-site, and which is working well, and I think the numbers are proving out that it's a need in our community to have story time. I'm sorry.
Where is it?
At St. Francis Episcopal Church on Miori. But the area is improvement in there. I need to continue exploring ways to harden that library building. When we get to the end, we'll talk about strike teams to help buildings. But it's a building that takes a lot of time to board up. So there's other things to look at, maybe ballistic film on the windows and things like that. So that when we talk about hardening. And then develop a materials return process when the library's closed. And again, a policy to council ahead of time on fee waivers, on what council's wishes are on that. So the parks is another area. I know we're all getting calls about when Riverside's going to open. I'll talk about that in a second. But the timeline there, just wanted to show you what our crews did as quickly as possible to get parks opened back up. They, we started immediately once we could assess, and they started, assessing parks on Monday, and then closed them because of the damage, and then started beginning cleanup on Wednesday the 30th, which I thought, and that worked really well. And James I'll move through those pretty quickly. Council can look at those later. We did start mosquito spraying on September 1. We continue to do mosquito spraying throughout the community, which is also as long as the weather allows and the wind conditions allows. But let's keep going. We had all of our parks open back up by the 20th except for Riverside Park. So thank you. Riverside Park, this is the one everybody's ready for us to get back open because the weather's beautiful and they're missing their bike rides and their walks and their runs in Riverside. So the Urban Forest Strike Team started on the 18th to assess damaged trees. They looked at damaged trees to determine if it had to be cut down or if it could be saved. So in Riverside, we had 1,350 trees that were assessed, which means they were damaged. So on the 6th, we've started the tree and debris removal in Riverside. We've zoned Riverside off so we can get sections opened up and not have to wait on the whole park to be cleaned up to be opened. We've started over near John F. Lee Drive, which is over by the Pump House and the Texas Zoo. The pump house is open for business, and then the Texas Zoo has an event Saturday. So we're working on making sure that area is clean to get that open back up. So we'll work, that is the south part of the park, so we'll work toward the golf course and continue on. But that's kind of what we're doing, so as we are able to open those sections up, we will.
Got an off-the-wall question about Riverside Park. I guess the first part is FEMA reimbursing for that removal?
They are, as long as they touch it once, they will not touch it twice, and I can talk about that under the golf course, but yes.
I was just wondering if there wasn't an opportunity to sell pecan wood to a mill.
Not with FEMA.
We can't use our 10%.
Once FEMA takes possession of it, it's FEMA's. So,
All right,
yeah.
I've tried that same thing. It's FEMA's,
I
it's
mean,
their
it's
way
just-
or the highway.
Yeah,
They won't let anybody touch a
it's
damn
just
thing.
such good lumber that could be milled, so.
There's a nice pecan tree at the Lions Club. If somebody wishes to help the Lions Club
Get that one.
cut it up, and yeah, I'm sure they would love to have a volunteer help them with that.
Okay.
So, the golf course, the good news there is there was no damage to the pro shop, which the parking lot was full of flood water, but we had no flood in the pro shop. The roof held up, so we're very fortunate in that area. We've done a lot of work to try to get it, to reopen sometime mid-September, so I was thankful that that didn't happen. We're currently cleaning, we haven't started cleaning debris. We should start cleaning debris off of the golf course. Okay, thank you. So when you talk about FEMA, FEMA will only reimburse if they touch it once. The golf course, cleaning the golf course is going to take special equipment to do that. So we're contracting with Ashbrook to do that. They're going to move the debris out to the road, and FEMA will pick it up off of the road, but that will not be reimbursed to get it to the road because of the special equipment. We can't put that heavy equipment on that we're doing in the rest of the park on the golf course without damaging it, so. But we're working hard. Go back one, please. Thank you. So I want to talk about the erosion picture there because this is going to create a problem in the park. We've got two erosion areas near the duck pond and kind of across the middle where you go into the golf course. They're extensive, and I'm not sure of the integrity of the road. We're working, Ken Gill is working on getting with NRCS, thank you, on having, and they should be out soon, I think, to look at that, to offer suggestions. Today, okay, thank you, that is soon. Today, to offer suggestions on how we're going to repair these. And so till we get those answers done, we may not be able to open the park all the way up. You may not be able to drive all the way through the park until we know about the integrity of that road. You might, if we get half of the park opened up from the golf course south, you would come in on Red River, you would not be able to come down all the way down to McCrite. If the road is going to take a little bit longer and we can get Grover's Bend area opened back up, then you'll come down McCrite and be able to go to Grover's Bend, but you won't be able to go all the way to Red River. So, but we'll work through that. But, areas of improvement in that area, we need to predetermine what the use of the community center complex and grounds are going to be. We have lots of requests to use the complex. We set up the points of distribution there for water and ice. We moved the state, the DDC over there. At some point, they needed to use the facility. So there seems to be a lot of competition for that ground. So, okay, thank you, James. We'll move on. So Public Works, this is a timeline on this, and Donald is very prepared to answer any questions. He also has a slide presentation that really goes into detail on how our water treatment system works, if council wishes for him to go through that. So the timeline on the water, Jeff's talked a little bit about that on when we lost all the power to all the facilities. We had no potable water on Saturday. The boil notice water was issued, and I want to reiterate this, and I can't say it enough. It was issued due to low pressure. It was not issued to any contamination that went into our system, and that seems to be a rumor we can't catch. and I don't understand why.
Well, it was in the paper. I
Well,
mean, you know.
So
must be
we
right.
can't catch that rumor, but it was because at a certain point when your pressure goes down, you have to issue a boil water notice. Every bit of water that came out of the treatment plant into the homes was treated. It was always treated. So, and then a few days later, we had to continue it because of the high turbidity, because of the river flooding and all. So there was no contamination in the water, so that, I'm gonna go to sleep tonight saying that in my sleep, no contamination. So, but anyway, so, on the 27th, on Sunday, we were able to get AEP restored, one of the electrical feeds. We were able to do some treatment from our emergency recycle lagoons and distribute that out into the evening. Some people got water, depended on the pressure plane you were in, and some did not, but some did have water. I know Josie got a little water because I talked to her that night and she had some water, so, but anyway. And so on Monday, AEP restored the power to the raw water pump station. Jeff alluded to that, where we had to use airboats at time to get over there. And water was restored late in the day again. The boil water notice was in effect. We had a boil water notice for 10 days, and I know that was very inconvenient, but we were following TCEQ guidelines for that. But anyway, so areas of improvement, we've talked about that. We've got to determine, where we need permanent versus rental generators. And if we do the rentals, where we've got the switches, if we need those in the locations. We need to improve the road and operating those groundwater wells quarterly to ensure water can feed Plant 3. That'll be under full load. So I think we've talked about that. So the street department, just to let you know kind of what they were doing, immediately on Monday, they started following the Ashbrook crews to remove, they were inspecting and cleaning the storm drains. And then, of course, the traffic control people with some crews from Public Works started trying to get the signals back in place, the mast arms back in place. If some of you saw those mast arms, it was amazing how the wind moved them. It's just absolutely amazing. We started sweeping on September the 11th after the roadways were cleared. So some improvements there. We did an initial clean of the drains, just on the top and around the opening. We'll look at a better way to maybe clean further into those drains, because I know Donald expressed to me they found a 2x4, I think, down one of the drains. So it's amazing that a 2x4 could go down one of those drains. So, yes, sir.
Right there on Rio Grande where my shop used to be, it flooded several times. The leaves had just gone over top of the drain hole. I eventually went down there with a rake and pulled it off with a rake, and it drained just fine. But it was, that was a problem area. We don't have any way to address that. I just did it on my own because it needed doing, but we had areas all over, and it was just simply a mass of leaves, twigs and limbs over the drains. So there may have been some flooding due to stopped up drain, which you could fix in 3 minutes with a rake.
Sure. Yes, and I know at one point we did ask the public to help us with that. I saw a lot of people out in the public, cleaning around their drains. So, but we'll work on that. But and then the other thing that is, Donald plans on evaluating the pump sizes that we use around Second and Glass Street. You've been here long enough, when the river comes up and we think it's going to flood, we place pumps down there to pump. So he's going to evaluate that, the pump. Traffic control, I think we've talked a lot about traffic control, but just as a reminder, we have 88 traffic signals in this community, and all of them were damaged. So again, thankful to our crews did a yeoman's job, but Austin helped us too. We believe we have about 50% of our traffic and street signs damaged. So that crew is working on that. I don't have an idea of when they'll be finished, but they've started working on that. They've got some signs that were turned into them, so they're replacing those and working on those, and then they'll concentrate around the schools to make sure that schools, the signs around schools are taken care of, and just work throughout the city. That's going to be a months-long process. It's not going to happen overnight, so.
Can you clarify something I'm still confused about regarding the stop signs?
Uh-huh.
We made a star request,
Yes.
right?
Yes, we did.
But the city of San Antonio contacted me, and then I followed up because the star request, whatever, wasn't coming, I don't know. They had an ample inventory, and then the state said no? What happened? Do y'all recall?
My understanding is that the STAR request, we were told could not be fulfilled.
But San Antonio was prepared to send them, and
Oh.
TxDOT got involved and said you couldn't.
Now.
Am I wrong?
I
That was
don't,
a-
I don't
thought that
remember
was a
this.
different text dot region.
I don't remember.
Okay, well, I don't know what
Remember that?
region, but
I
that
don't know.
doesn't change the fact. I don't know what happened. I never really got clarification.
I can't
Do you
really,
remember?
I can't really speak to whether or not TxDOT said they couldn't fill them, but San Antonio reached out, and what they did was they reached out to some of their neighboring cities, Alamo Heights, Balcones Heights, and they gathered some of their portable stop signs and then shipped them down to us, and that's how we got them. So I'm not.
Did
I'm
get
not-
some from
we
San
did-
Antonio?
Yes.
But,
through-
oh, from their neighboring
Yeah,
communities.
through San
Okay.
Antonio reaching out to their partners.
Okay.
But I don't know where the STAR request
So
ended up.
Austin helped with the crews fixing the signals, and the signs came from,
Well, Austin brought
Sign.
signs too.
Yes, they
yeah.
brought some, they
Okay.
brought some signs as well.
Yeah.
okay, okay, good.
Those
All right.
temporary signal poles were nice.
I'm sorry?
The temporary signal poles, the little poles that had a line.
And the span wire. That also, when Austin came, they brought all the, their inventory that we would need they brought everything to repair a signal, intersection, signalized intersection.
So
So,
with the city of San Antonio, really don't know what happened. It doesn't matter at this point. It's a moot point.
Can I make a
Have done
point?
something to help.
Yeah.
Concerning the signs, the stop signs, it's not just the people from Victoria. We had so many people from out of town because there was wrecks of people that didn't know that there was a light signal there at any time because they're just going down 59. So I don't know how we would address that or how we could let people know, hey, there was a light here. I mean, they're not going to be looking up.
I think the way we address that going forward, y'all last week approved a mutual aid agreement with the city of Austin. And so that stays into effect, and we've got that down as making sure we have mutual aid agreements for large-scale events. So, because we cannot, one of the improvements is to increase our portable stop sign inventory. One, you're not going to want that much inventory on hand,
Right.
that's just not real good.
No, but I'm saying
Expense.
to let people know from out of town that, hey.
Oh, I don't know,
It's-
Miss Solis, there's probably no
No.
way.
If you have portable stop
What would be a
signs.
possible answer?
That's,
Yeah. something that they can see.
What would be a possible answer? I'm not sure, I know.
yeah,
Well, the
that's-
answer is to get the stop signs out
The-
faster.
Right, right. Well,
Yes.
especially like on 59, that was,
People to pay attention.
yeah, the major thoroughfares, man, 'cause those people, they just fly through there.
I know the chief could tell you a story or two about pulling people over, doing that, just flying down the Vero because they thought they had the right of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's, yeah. But I think,
That mutual aid agreement, I think, I look forward to seeing more of those. I think it's gonna be a good template for other communities too, so we can all help each other and not rely on STAR and everything else.
but to get reimbursed, we have to go through and put the request into the state. And if the state cannot fulfill it, then that's where and that way we're ensure we get reimbursed from FEMA. Because Austin came down and quickly did it, but there's, I think it was a little over $200,000. And so we will get reimbursed for that, but, we have to follow the paperwork. So,
And I know it's gonna be harder to make changes to FEMA to.
So, yeah, but anyway, but no, I think they're wise. And then another thing that Donald wants to look at and we'll look at is the wind load on the traffic signals and sign, how much we're loading those mast arms down with, so. The next to last one is just some ideas that with us working with Rick and his team, making sure we do. Jeff mentioned the bureaucratic process, and it does seem that way, but we have an incident command organizational chart, and it works for a reason that you know what everybody's doing, and you know everybody has a role. And it's different than the organizational chart for the city, My role's a lot different. Some of us are put in roles that we don't normally do every day, but there is a method to it, and sometimes I feel like it's organized chaos, but there's a method there, and it's what the fire department uses on any of their incidences. But the purpose is so you can blend multiple agencies into a situation, and we all are talking the same language, and we all know our roles, and it makes it run a lot smoother. But We need to continue to emphasize our NIMS training. That's our incident management systems training. We've done a really good job in the city, but we just need to make sure we continue doing that. I mentioned it early, but not totally. We do a great job on response, and we drill for response. We do not drill for post-incidences like we should. And it's kind of interesting, Rick had talked to me, I don't know, 6, 7 months ago about where do you think there's a need for drilling? And we talked about we need to drill for the recovery mode. Well, we had the best drill I think we're going to get for a long time, but that's an area we need to make sure that we don't forget in the future, is that we are doing those drills for recovery. It may not seem like a lot, but we do need to predetermine who's going to be assigned to that phone bank, because that is such a critical communication tool for our residents to call in, and they do use that. And then ensure that our contacts with local businesses for supplies during disasters and a list of community assets is updated annually. There is a list. We just need to make sure it's annually updated and it's a little more accurate. So, but the I think this, yeah, it's my last slide besides my quote. But there's just some general areas. You know, I didn't talk a lot about our building services department. They do an incredible job for our internal areas. But we've got to develop some strike teams to help. It's a small team, and they cannot secure all the city buildings prior to the storm. And there was no way. We got a portion of the library hardened before the storm. We ran out of time, and the winds picked up. So, but I think if we can develop some strike teams, that will help. We had a little communication glitch with our fleet contractor on when their staff needed to return. We'll work on that. When you have a bunch of generators working, we realized we need a large capacity fuel truck. We had a couple, 100-gallon trucks, and that just, we could not, we were running constantly, so we've got to do a little better job with that. So we've already mentioned it on exercising generators under full load, make sure we have a calendar. We'd like some policies on fee waiver, so we're not doing that after the fact. Create a communication piece for our employees if we lose those cell towers. You know, we were fortunate we could communicate with our employees, and most of them knew when they needed to report back in, but in the event we don't. And then the last one is, doesn't necessarily affect the city the community as a whole, but it does affect our employees, is create some kind of program to help our own employees during and after a disaster. You know, when we're trying to get our city buildings hardened, our employees are doing that, and they're not necessarily able to go home and take care of their own business, and I think it's critical. We worked really hard on trying to rotate, but the storm, with its uniqueness and, you know, how quickly it sped up, we didn't have a whole lot of time. But then we had many employees working after the disaster that had a lot of damage to their homes, that had roofs caved in, ceilings caved in. One employee was totally out of his home and had to move into an RV. So want to make sure going forward that we've got something in place to help those employees, because as they're helping the community, you know, we want to make sure that their needs are taken care of too, because often it gets overlooked. So, my last deal is a quote, and my department heads know sometimes I use quotes because I want to reemphasize that I appreciate the constructive criticism, but at the same time, I think we did an incredible job responding to hurricane of this magnitude in this community. So, couldn't help but Eleanor Roosevelt quote, and I'm going to read it aloud. You have to accept whatever comes, and the only important thing is that you meet it with courage and with the best that you have to give. Our employees did it.
I agree. My only, I know my prayers are to change the next hurricane. I want about a week ahead of time. What do y'all say? But I will ask a higher authority for that,
Yeah,
so.
at least 72 hours.
Oh, yeah, that would be a hell of an improvement, wouldn't it? So
It would be.
I think the most of the community would agree with me to pray for that if we ever have one, hopefully not, so. Okay, I think that concludes.
Absolutely.
One of the things that
Thank
did go
you,
well
Ms.
was that
Garrett.
we had some money
Sorry.
on hand.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay,
we do.
we do have an executive session, and where do y'all want to go? Just next door? Can we do it in here? That includes our normal agenda, and Will there be no further announcements after this executive session?
That's correct. The city council will recess now for executive session on the 16th of May, 2017 at 7:20 PM. The subject matter of the executive session deliberation is Texas Government Code Section 551.072 to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property interests due to the fact that the deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the city in negotiations with a third person. Thank you.
Oh, I know.